The third time was a charm as VGK eliminates the Dallas Stars to advance to the Stanley Cup Final. They'll take on the Florida Panthers with game number 1 set Saturday here in Las Vegas. We'll talk about the win. We'll talk about what's ahead coming up on Locked On Golden Knights.
Your Locked On Golden Knights, your daily podcast on the Vegas Golden Knights, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hi again, everyone. Tony Cardasco along with Chris Golick. We come to you from Las Vegas after VGK disposes of the Dallas Stars. Las Vegas, the home of the Western Conference champion, Vegas Golden Knights. You can find us on Twitter at Tony Dasco, at TD Chris G, at Locked On VGK. We are on YouTube as well, Locked On Golden Knights. Please subscribe there. We are looking awfully tight on today's show with these new graphics. And as you can see, if you're watching on YouTube, we have a rundown of today's show, just right over there somewhere. Okay. With the Game 6 recap, we'll talk about the team effort and Bruce Cassidy and the job that he has done, as now he will be called South Bay Bruce. And then, of course, the home, the two records against the Panthers this past season. First of all, Chris, I know you've been around this team since season 1, season ticket holder, and you've covered some of the games as a media member, and this means a lot to you and to the fan base. A lot of your good friends, I'm sure, are really excited about VGK, so let's celebrate them before we get into the nuts and bolts of this series.
Yeah, I mean, this is super exciting. And for me, watching my son experience it, I think, and my daughter too, but, Chris is definitely the one who takes to it more than Allie does. And it's really cool to see him experiencing it up close. And, the way that our followers have taken to supporting Chris when he comes on the show, whether he says the right or wrong thing, they definitely appreciate him coming on and stuff. And, there's I do think about some of the friendships I've made and stuff. I mean, you and I, if Vegas doesn't exist, I have no idea who the heck you are. So, whoopsies, that's okay. We're in the Stanley Cup. I get one of those a year right there. And just, some of the other friendships, I remember when Vegas first started as a team, some of my coworkers, we created a little Facebook group that we all chat on and stuff like that, and just the sharing drinks at the games and cheers and celebrating the goals and high-fiving my friends Kevin and Christy behind me and all the people you get to know around us. It's just so much fun, and it's cool to experience this. But this time we're not here just to be here. I felt like season 1 we were cool about being here, but it feels like the mission is not over yet.
The Golden Knights headed to the Stanley Cup Final. They defeat the Dallas Stars 6-0 in Game 6. I have to first give a ton of credit to the fourth line for stepping up in this game because Bruce Cassidy was all over them, and he made it known in his last presser yesterday or a couple of days ago. And Cassidy started Nick Waz, the fourth line center, in game number 6 after Cassidy was really disappointed with this team and their lack of effort, and they weren't forechecking and doing all the right things in game number 5 in that loss. But they were buzzing early. And then, of course, the big goals. William Carrier scores a goal. Keegan Colasar, really good, strong on the forecheck.
Colasar. I picked Colasar.
You picked Colasar. That's right. Yeah, you sure did. And they played very well there. And that one possession where Waugh just would not let the rookie Wyatt Thompson out of the zone, and then they create the turnover and the eventual goal. 2 backhanded goals by Carrier. That's another sign that things were going just right for VGK.
Yeah, I mean, the fourth line definitely, we'll talk a little more about the depth of this team in the second segment, but, the depth of the team is on display. And with the fourth line clicking like this, the fourth line is going to be heavily leaned upon for energy. And obviously, if they can put some pucks in the net and create some high danger chances, here comes Matt Tkachuk and all the stuff that we've seen him do as a member of the Calgary Flames. Some very noteworthy scrums with Marc-Andre Fleury and basically anyone wearing the opposition's sweater. And he hasn't stopped that sort of thing at all in the Stanley Cup playoffs as well. He's going to be our new public enemy number one, and the fourth line. Their job is going to be to put him and the rest of the team in their place, and it's going to be a lot of fun seeing the Colasar / Carrier Matt Tkachuk battle.
Also, the original Misfits stepping up. William Karlsson, a couple of goals and an assist. Jonathan Marchessault also had a goal in this game, and so for Karlsson he now has 10 goals in the playoffs after 14 in the regular season. Don't get me started there. And then Marchessault it was his 9th goal as he tied Karlsson. And I believe Stevenson has 8 goals. So they're in quite a battle. But the one name that's missing is Jack Eichel, who was not able to break through as far as scoring goals. He did ring the post that one time. But, man, I got to tell you, he does so many other things for this VGK team, and he's been very important on the ice.
I was having a little up and back with someone on YouTube. Again, the comments on YouTube, guys, they're definitely a little more, a little on the edgier side than Twitter, because we do get some, opposition fans coming on there. They're good stuff. Every now and then it gets a little awkward, but the conversations for the most part are good. And I think I don't know if it was a VGK follower or who I was going up and back with, but Eichel needs to score goals. He's paid to put pucks in the nets. And then you realize, you go back to his impact on the Edmonton series, just simply when he was on the ice, was 10-1, 11-1 for the goals scored on the ice in 5-on-5 circumstances when Eichel was on the ice. And I don't know what that number was this series. It probably wasn't as good, but it was probably still a good number. And I believe this is the 17th playoff game. I don't know if he was involved in the Marchessault goal as far as getting a point or not, but either way, it's 18 points in 17 games or 19 points in 17 playoff games. So, I mean, sure, Eichel's not scoring, but honestly, at a point per game clip in the playoffs, he's doing everything just fine.
I've got to ask you a question. We are done, by the way, with ESPN's coverage, thankfully. So it'll be all TNT the rest of the way here in the Cup final. Sean McDonough said that 5 of the 6 goals were scored by the bottom 6. And that led to some sort of a debate that someone had said on Twitter that they inverted the lines. That can't even be. No, 5 of the 6 goals were not scored by the bottom 6. Okay, we got to get that straight.
Well, because technically they've been listing, I think the Stone line is line 3 and the Karlsson line is line 1. And I don't know. I mean, whatever. Like you said, I mean, we're done with ESPN. Besides Linda Cohen, it wasn't Emily Kaplan, fine, whatever. The announcers, like Subban, you saw him. He's as fair weather of a fan as you're going to get. He was all of a sudden all over Vegas, in a positive way once the game was over. But,
right.
Come on, you're the Dallas Stars. It's our life on the line. Rah, rah, rah. Get out of here. Go home. Send him home. Send him home.
The defense, I think, gave up 12 shots on goal. There was one portion of this game where VGK blocked 7 consecutive shots for Dallas. So defensively, again, so fans are asking, okay, and it's a logical question, how come we didn't see this VGK team the last 2 games heading into game 6? So games 4 and 5, where was VGK? Where was this defense? And where was this jump and the speed that they exhibited in game 6? They definitely just outraced the Dallas Stars.
I don't think any team in the history of the Stanley Cup playoffs have gone 16-0. I could be wrong. I definitely don't think anyone's ever gone 82-0 in the regular season last time I checked. And, let's credit the Dallas Stars. Let's credit the Edmonton Oilers. Let's credit the Winnipeg Jets. It is not easy to qualify for the Stanley Cup playoffs. It is not easy to advance through rounds. These are good teams. These are good franchises, all capable. I mean, the Oilers very capable of winning a Stanley Cup, as were the Dallas Stars. So they're going to win games. They're going to win games, and they're going to make adjustments. They're going to play desperate. And ESPN did have a good point down the line in the third period of the game where, sometimes the tank just goes empty. two, very emotional overtime wins with your life on the line, that takes a toll. Their last series against Seattle went 7 games. That takes a toll. So maybe that's why Dallas ultimately slowed down. But, VGK fans, yeah, sure, it'd been nice to get the sweep and all that. And we definitely know about the sweat of the game 6. I certainly understand that. But, VGK reminded everyone just, how good they can be when, it's all clicking. And they, pounded the crap out of Dallas basically 2 games this series. And then you had, some close games that could have gone either way in overtime. So, the real VGK did stand up in the end, just like they did in the first couple of games of the series. I do stand by my comments about there being a relatively sizable talent gap in the two teams, but Dallas is still going to win games in the playoffs. And, if it wasn't for the spectacular play of Aiden Hill, maybe we are going to a game 7. Who knows? Maybe we would have been in the ones down 3-2 going into this game tonight if it wasn't for what Aiden Hill did.
Okay, yeah, and then of course overtime games, hit and miss. You could just score in sudden death. I mean, either team could really score.
It's a toss-up. It's 50-50.
Right, it absolutely is. And we saw the handshake line after the game. I think that they had a couple of words there. I'm sure Jamie Benn probably apologized to Mark Stone.
They had a smile. They had a smile.
Although, again, ESPN missed the moment entirely. They show, rather than following Stone through the line, they absolutely missed it. We caught the tail end, and I think that's what the fans wanted to see, some drama there. And then, of course, the trophy or the cup presentation of the Campbell Cup. And like I said, I'm a little bit superstitious myself, but yeah, there's no way I would have touched the Campbell Cup after the game. Mark Stone had mentioned that the fellas that played on the team in year 1, season 1 for VGK, they said they touched the cup, and we saw the result, and they lost. And so right before the game, or maybe a couple of games ago, they said, we win the Campbell Cup, we are not going to touch it. No one touched it. It was kind of funny. They just left it there on the ice.
So there's 2 important things that need to be noted right now. Number 1, yes, they didn't touch the cup. Where they did touch it in season 1 didn't work out. And number 2, I just put the video out there. The Vegas Golden Knights are 1-0 in Stanley Cup Finals games when
when you
cranked
did what?
the siren
I saw
at T-Mobile
nice video.
Arena.
That's great.
So
you want them to lose every game at home.
Yes, yeah, Tony. I wanted them to lose every game and a reverse curse just like you. No, I'm just saying they didn't touch the bull. They have me crank the siren for at least 1, maybe 2 of the games. We got this thing, folks. We got it. Give me a call. I'm open.
Coming up next on today's show, we will talk about the team effort and VGK's depth and South Beach. Did I call him South Bay earlier? South Beach Bruce.
Whatever.
We'll see the return of that tan. Man, that was like an insta-tan when they went to Florida earlier this season. We'll get to all that, and we'll give him his props and his flowers. We'll return right here on Locked On Golden Knights. Today's episode brought to you by a product that we use literally every day. It is AG1 by Athletic Greens. That's right, Athletic Greens. Maybe you're a lot like us and you want to be healthy and eat well, but it's easier said than done, especially here with everyone on the move and here in Las Vegas. And there's no longer that is the case with AG1. With one delicious scoop of AG1 in a glass of water each day, you are absorbing 75 high-quality vitamins, minerals, whole food sourced superfoods, probiotics, and adaptogens that'll help you start the day off on the right foot. This special blend of ingredients supports your gut health, your nervous system, your immune system, your energy, recovery, focus, and aging. All of those things. It can be very hard. It can be very expensive to keep track of all of these multiple different supplements and vitamins, and not to mention how hard it can be on your stomach as well. AG1 definitely will cost you less than $3 per day. You are investing in your health, and it is much cheaper than your cold brew habit. Right now, it's time to reclaim your health and to arm your immune system with convenient daily nutrition. And to make it easy, Athletic Greens is going to give you a free 1-year supply of immune-supporting vitamin D and 3 free travel packs with your very first purchase. All you have to do is visit athleticgreens.com/NHL Network, athleticgreens.com/NHL Network to take ownership over your health and to pick up the ultimate daily nutritional insurance. Welcome back to Locked On Golden Knights. Tony Cardasco and Chris Golick. We come to you from Las Vegas. It's an exciting night here in Vegas as the Golden Knights clinch the Western Conference and advance to the Stanley Cup Final. And I guess one of the reasons why VGK is here is because, again, we talked about the fourth line. We talked about the bottom six, whether they scored or not. It's another story. We talked about the misfits. And each and every night, Chris, the depth of this team has shown, and different players have definitely risen to the occasion nearly every night for the VGK. That's been one of their keys to success.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, it is a there's 18 skaters on the ice. You have 12 forwards, 6 defensemen, and you have your bottom 6 of those forwards. And day one, Tony, look, one of our very first points that we were talking about is we'll go to the third line for a second here. What was going to be the impact of the third line? And that's the most challenging line for most franchises. And technically speaking, our third line has Mark Stone on it.
Yeah.
Just stop and think about that for a second right there. It's like when the Blackhawks were, that was my former love, I guess you can call it. Marian Hossa, I believe it was in the finals cup run the Chicago Blackhawks had. Marian Hossa was a third line winger, and having that kind of depth that can contribute and do good things night in and night out. I mean, when things were at their worst during the regular season, the third line was in shambles for the most part. The fourth line, they would never call the fourth line the third line at any point for whatever reason. And you didn't really want to mess with the top 2 lines during the regular season. So, the third line was a revolving door at times, as it is for most teams. But when, knock on wood, this team has been very healthy throughout the playoffs. We don't want that to change now. But having Mark Stone as your third line winger, that's pretty spectacular.
And Bruce Cassidy deserves a ton of credit with his team. I saw him after the game on ESPN, and he was just talking about when he came in here, he didn't really know any of the players, not familiar with them, not personally. Remember him and Jack Eichel, the conversation in Cape Cod last summer. He didn't know. He was stuck with a couple of coaches that he was not familiar with, that were holdovers from the previous regime with Pete DeBoer. And coming into this series, again, his confidence, I think, is growing. I'd have to believe that after Boston let him go, I really do believe that he does have a chip on his shoulder. He might not always express it that way. I know when the reporters, right before the game on Monday, when they said to him, they quoted Pete DeBoer saying that DeBoer felt that Dallas is putting pressure on the Golden Knights. He got a little irritated, a little hot under the collar. And he said, no, it doesn't really matter to us. We're just concerned about ourselves. And the game plan going in, he said, we're not going to chase matchups. He said, we're going to forecheck the puck. They're going to play harder. That's exactly what they did. I think when Cassidy just focuses on certain areas, I think the team responds.
Yeah, so I mean, going back to Cassidy here, I threw a little shade at the Bruins when they got knocked out. They were up 3-1 on the Florida Panthers, who obviously we're going to get to know a lot more about in the next 2.5 weeks or so. And I said Cassidy would not have allowed that Bruins team to not advance. And I know we mentioned people are keeping receipts for down the road. I know my Twitter feed would have absolutely blown the heck up had Cassidy coughed up a 3-0 lead, starting with Ian from Locked On Bruins. I know he's got one for me, and it's fair whenever he gets his chance to fire that shot. And anyone else, I've been chirping a little bit about the success of Cassidy and the fact that the Bruins did turn their nose to him, and I'm glad that they did. Listen, Pete DeBoer, they talked a little bit about that on ESPN. If DeBoer, should have been fired, not should have been fired. 500 injury man games lost, blah 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 blah. That story writes itself. I don't think Pete DeBoer would have had this same level of success. Long story longer. Cassidy was the right man for the job. He needed a reset. And it was good having some of those assistant coaches that know the players, know their strengths, their weaknesses, but also the right blend of Cassidy being able to come in and formulate his own opinions of players and different ways to maximize the potential of the roster. That was always something that I was concerned with about Pete DeBoer not being able to get the highest level of potential out of the rookies and the vets and everything in between. Whereas Cassidy, I think, has every player playing at their peak right now.
We haven't always agreed with Cassidy. He was shuffling lines, I thought, too much, especially later on in the season. I think that was one of the things that you and I talked about repeatedly.
Agree.
But he needed to work out a lot of kinks in his system. And I think the most important point to make about Cassidy is that the players bought into his system because let's face it, there were and there are a lot of egos on this team still. You have players that come from other organizations. I think that they put those personal issues and their egos aside. And I think that they came together as a team. I think they really grew, Chris, as a team this season. Again, I have to credit, I know you want to credit McCrimmon like you usually do on the show,
It was
but
coming. It was coming, actually.
was that coming out? I know sooner
It
or
was
later, it's
coming
just a
right
matter
now.
of
Like
time.
literally, it was. I was going,
But let me
then he just
stop
kept
you.
going.
Let's talk about Cassidy because he's coached this team. I think he's done a tremendous job with the VGK to get them to this point, and he's been to a final before.
Yeah, no doubt. And Cassidy, he's learned a lot from that final. He had two chances to win the Stanley Cup. It might have been three. It was definitely two. They were up 3-2 in that one. Might have lost Tony for a second. We'll get him back, though. We'll get Tony back some way, somehow. But Cassidy certainly has taken something from that Stanley Cup final. And, he's going to use that to help get the Golden Knights. There you go, Tony. I see you now. We'll find a way to take what he learned in losing to the Blues and Pietrangelo and find a way to make a positive out of it. And what I was going to say about McCrimmon as a compliment to Cassidy was McCrimmon and McPhee have done a very good job at finding the right character players to bring in. They've been targeting former captains, Stanley Cup pedigree. Jack Eichel. I mean, listen, that was a risk, and McCrimmon obviously is going to get a pass now because that's what he tied his basically VGK career to, and McPhee to an extent. But people did question Eichel's character, how he was going to be in the locker room. This locker room cancer. Oh my God, everyone was chirping us from Buffalo, for the first 6 months after that trade got made, and even at the start of the season. Well, I got news for you, folks. Jack Eichel is a pretty good character guy in the VGK organization, and he's going to the Stanley Cup final. He wasn't going to do that in Buffalo. He wasn't.
Coming up next on the show, we'll talk about the Panthers. Of course, it's a big week ahead. They'll play on Saturday. We'll do a crossover with Locked On Panthers later in this week, probably on Friday. And we've got a big week ahead, big week planned. It's the Cup final. It's VGK and the Panthers from Florida. We'll return with more right after this on Locked On Golden Knights. Welcome back to Locked On Golden Knights. Tony Cardasco and Chris Golick from Las Vegas. Hey, we remind you that each and every Friday we have WTF. That's What the Friday. We might have to move that to Thursday this week. Who knows? But we are going to have a good time, and we are going to get into all of your fan comments and such. And man, my Twitter feed is at Tony Dasco. Yours is at TD Chris G. And thanks for getting the fans riled up again to kind of give me, a lot more sauce. It's always fun when hashtag Vegas Bjorn, and now they're starting to call Carlson Vegas Bjorn, which is even funnier because that's the nickname I had for him going back to season 1.
What are you going to do, Tony, if they show, I'm going to interrupt you 1 second. What are you going to do, Tony, if they show, like in warm-ups, Carlson skating around, standing in front of someone on the glass with the sign says Vegas Bjorn? What are you going to do, Tony? Tell me. Is that the highlight of your career right there, if that happens?
I might have to run to the arena and hit the glass because it's so annoying. What do you say? Okay, so we do have this Stanley Cup matchup, VGK and the Stanley Cup final for the second time in 6 years, which is pretty incredible.
Their first 6 years. First.
In the initial 6 years of the organization. And so again, this series, Florida gets into the playoffs for fans that haven't followed this journey. The final day of the season, when you could blame your Chicago Blackhawks for beating the Pittsburgh Penguins, knocking them out of the playoffs, and the Panthers get in. And then, of course, the Magic, and what a run that they have had, starting with beating Boston and then eliminating the team with the second most points, right, in Carolina, there in the last series, and blanking them and sweeping Carolina. So this is not going to be an easy series, coast to coast. I just want to start things off for this big week with, Florida, by the time they play VGK, they will have had 10 days of rest. And VGK has 4 days of rest coming up into that first game. Florida has to travel here. Again, it's coast to coast. I don't know if that's going to be a factor or not. But here was a team in Florida that was red hot, and they were playing perhaps over their heads. I mean, some might say, because they weren't expected to be there. They just were in a groove, and puck luck and every other sort of luck was on their side. So is it going to be beneficial for Florida to have that much time off to heal, or did they lose a lot of their mojo and momentum?
I'll start by crediting Florida. I think Florida needs a ton of credit for getting
They
this far.
do.
Bobrovsky is playing on just a whole nother planet. We're watching a potential best case scenario, best performance ever in a playoff, in a Stanley Cup playoffs in Bobrovsky right now. Hopefully we can slow that down a little bit. Matt Tkachuk is an absolute gem of a pickup for the Florida Panthers, and he's money. He is just money at what he does. Back to your question, it's a long layoff. I mean, 10 days, that's longer than the All-Star break. That's longer than anything that you've seen. I think the NHL tried to take off like 2 weeks during COVID to catch up games, but there was games rescheduled and stuff. That's the only stoppage, the only scheduled stoppage I recall in recent memory. So I think Florida is going to come out a little sluggish in that first period. Any team, this isn't a knock on Florida. It's just the reality of the fact that you have that long without, putting your jersey on, your game day jersey on, playing at game day speed. VGK has a real good opportunity to come out and set the tone, set the pace for the first period, and maybe even get spotted a goal or two lead. And then hopefully they can obviously find a way to capitalize on that. But the series is going to slow down. It's going to get muddy in the neutral zone. Florida's done a very good job at doing that to some of the best teams in the league, as far as Carolina and Toronto and Boston are concerned. And we have seen Vegas struggle when teams are able to slow us down through the neutral zone. But like in Edmonton and Dallas, VGK also bought into the fact that they got Chip and Chase. And for my hockey card followers, they have to, here we go. I got this right here. This is a little inside joke, but they have to hustle, hit, and never quits. They got to hustle, hit, and never quit. I busted out the HHNQ for my hockey followers there. You're going to love that when you guys see this. But yeah, get the pucks deep. Same thing against Dallas. Get the pucks deep, wear out their defensemen, make them not as willing to go into the corners. And this is where obviously the Keegan Colasar line is key into that, right, Tony?
Oh, man. Two things I thought would never occur in the same game. A carrier, the backhanded goal. I didn't have that on the bingo card, along with the Colasar goal in the same game. Never would have thought that. But the season series was split, right? At one apiece.
Yeah, it was split at one apiece. January 12th, they matched up at T-Mobile Arena. Oddly enough, the game where Mark Stone goes out and doesn't come back until game one of the playoffs. And obviously everyone's going to have what they want to say about that. But the reality is that happened. And
yeah,
exactly. And then the second time, there was a 4-2 victory, Vegas. Then I believe they lost 2-1 in Florida. It's just a weird game, right? It was the first game of the road trip. BGK was really hot going into it. And it's one of those games when you kind of thought that could happen. Again, credit Florida for playing a really good game. Don't take anything away from them. But you kind of felt that coming. So there's not a whole lot to take away from those two games. They definitely got different versions of each other. Certainly VGK players on the shelf. I can't even tell you what the goalie situation was for either of those games, but hopefully Aiden Hill, right?
Wasn't it Spencer Knight there? I can't recall, and we'll have everything in order.
It could have been. It could have been. If I was better at this job, I would have all the information, but I'm not, so I don't.
You actually call this a job. VGK is favored in the series. The opening line was minus 130 for the Vegas Golden Knights, plus 110. Take back on the other side on the Florida
Dallas
Panthers.
line, same thing.
Yeah, same thing, right? But there are so many twists and turns with the betting lines, and I have to be more consistent with my selections. And one of the keys.
No, you don't. No, you don't.
One
Just
of
do what you're doing, Tony.
The fans love me for going against the grain here with my picks. One of the biggest differences before we get out of here, again, heading into Game 6 against Dallas for the VGK, Cassidy said that they needed to win the slot battles on both sides, on both ends, and they did exactly that. This is a stronger team that they're going to play, right? In the Florida Panthers, that'll definitely push them out of the slot.
Stronger, scrappier. I don't know the defenseman, but dude looks like a friggin' lumberjack, and he's been out there ragdolling players. Again, if I was better at my job, I'd know who he is. But he's been out there just ragdolling players right out of the slot and punishing players and making you think twice about going there. And you mentioned the betting lines, Tony. Game 5, VGK was a pretty sizable chalk. The public lined up to support the Vegas Golden Knights on Saturday at T-Mobile Arena to a tune of minus 160 or something like that. Tonight, or last night.
Tonight, no, it's tonight. Okay,
you're watching the show. Okay, this is a special late show. Got it.
Right.
The public was it was about 60-40 on the Dallas Stars. Vegas was a 105-110 favorite, depending on when you got it. So same thing, folks. I'll remind you all the time. The American betting public did not build the American betting public on successful bets did not build all these beautiful and glamorous sports books around town. And, the betting line kind of showed, what was going to happen in these last two games. And, the American public lost big money the last two games. I made a couple bucks tonight, though. So I'm feeling good about that.
It's going to be a very big week heading to game number 1. Hopefully there's some more festivities around town. Let's hope that they don't put Panic at the Disco in the Bellagio fountain where they get drenched again. They turned on the fountains when they were in there performing. I'll never forget that in year 1. But there will be a lot of fun other activities and festivities around the Stanley Cup. This is a big, big deal. And we'll get into more tomorrow, the next few days leading up to game number 1 on Saturday. We thank you all for tuning in. We appreciate our everydayers, the folks that tune in each and every day. Thanks so much for checking in on our social media. We really do enjoy the exchanges. It's so much fun. It really is. And
it's only going to get more fun.
For my man, Chris Golick. Oh, yeah. Are the Sharks now going to attach themselves to the Panthers bandwagon?
That tilts me more than William Karlsson tilts you.
Okay. From a man.
They're gonna, and then next season they're gonna be on the bandwagon of every team the Golden Knights play.
For Chris Golick, I'm Tony Cardasco. So long for now. We'll see you tomorrow right here on Locked On Golden Knights. Take care.